Halloween fanatics and mask nuts, welcome once again to the Mask Fan Attic, the attic above Horror Hotel, where it's 168 degrees up here tonight, and I am dying. It's true. And trust me, I know this, having done so before. But, well, I'm going to just get on with it now, quick, before this becomes a running documentary of my collapse from heat stroke as opposed to a mask collector segment. Look what we have dug up for you this week. It's a very cool, old-timey, old-school looking mask, none other than the Horror Frankenstein. Just give you a minute to switch those letters around and correct that because I'm being silly. Of course, it is in fact the Horror Sanctum Frankenstein. Don't want to really confuse anybody, do we? Or do we? Well, anyway, now this bad boy here, you may be looking at it right now and thinking, well, what does Dr. Lady see in such an ordinary looking mask? Because it doesn't look especially elaborate or colorful or especially detailed or especially deluxe. What's the big deal with it? Well, let me tell you, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked soon before I collapsed from the heat, in fact. The good thing about this mask is that it's made to capture a certain era and a certain feel of Halloween past. Halloween, it's the ghost of Halloween past, I guess, in a sense. It captures a vibe, a feel, a flavor of the Halloweens of yesteryear. Now, the Horror Sanctum, it's actually called a Retro Frank, or Retro Frankenstein, to be more exact. It's made to look like the kind of masks that everybody had. If you grew up in the 1960s or 70s, or maybe even into some of the 80s, you may have seen masks like this. They were simpler, they were plainer, they had kind of garish colors and sculpted hair and big red, scary blood all over the place. And they were really, really colorful in terms of, well, like this, look how green this is, you know? I mean, it's a very simple paint scheme. It's not colorful in that sense because it's only got a few colors, but it's colorful in as much as it is a rather unrealistic, greener than green. And that is the way they used to make them in the 60s and 70s. And this is for the older collector. This is like a mask that, this exact one didn't exist in the 60s or 70s, but there were very similar masks to it. In fact, the first mask I can remember owning, and this is way, way back. This is like, you know, I think Abraham Lincoln was still president, was similar to this. I think it was made by Topstone, but I'm not sure because I was a little kid. Anyway, it was green and had red blood in the scratches and painted on black hair. And it was similar to this. And about the only other thing I remember about it is that at one point it ended up stretched over a basketball, I kid you not, and attached to my grandpa's floor lamp, which had a stuffed jacket on a coat hanger attached to look like shoulders. And so as a little kid, that was my first attempt to build a life-size monster, was with a green, I think, Topstone mask. This looks very much like something from that era. Now, there's a whole line of these Horror Sanctum Studios came out with. There's a retro Dracula, Mummy, Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera, and they're all really fun because they really perfectly capture the charm of the Halloweens of yesteryear. You know, you look at this thing and you want to put on, you know, your grandpa's big dark overcoat and fishing boots and grab a plastic pumpkin or a pillowcase and go trick-or-treating because it really looks like something that would have come from back in the day, but of course it's newer, so it's going to last longer. And I think this is a very, very fun series and a fun idea. And, you know, to sculpt something that captures the authentic feel of the 60s and 70s monster world the way this does, you couldn't get that with a 23-year-old artist, really, who wasn't alive back then. It takes an old geezer, and like Sam, the guy at Horror Sanctum Studios, who sculpted these great retro-style masks. Now, recently, this was still available on the website. I don't know if it is or not anymore, but when they were available, they were only like 55 bucks. Not bad for such a cool thing as this. And again, maybe not going to appeal to all the teenage horror fans out there, but definitely going to appeal to the old goats like myself or like Sam, who remember what masks were like in the 60s and 70s. Okay, so that's it for this week. Just wanted to share that with you. Horror Frankenstein. Retro Frankenstein. That's right. From Horror Sanctum. and to be here again next week for more monstrousness. Good night and good grief.